Welcome to Fantasy Filmball, where we turn movies into sports and sports is just something that we don't talk about. My name is Dyl, and today, instead of diving into the Oscar season, we're switching things up a little bit and taking on the 2024 summer domestic box office head on, because from the first sparks of May to the grand finale of Labor Day, we're in for a cinematic roller coaster this summer. If you're joining us for the first time, buckle up for a wild ride. I am here solo today, so I'll do my best to entertain you as we navigate our way through these predictions, because we could all hit the jackpot together or can fall on our faces and do horrible with our predictions. But feel free to drop down your early predictions down below, because we can all come back here in a few months to see who got them all wrong or who was the least on Agayi, because P.S. I called Dune Part 2's box office trajectory all the way back in January in our Discord. The link is down below. If you don't enjoy my takes, feel free to drop that dislike button, or if you vibe, give me a thumbs up. It helps the channel grow with that pesky YouTube algorithm. Finally, to end my self-promo plug, normally when my co-host Matt is here, we're talking all the Oscar content, from early predictions to personal awards to festival coverage. In fact, he's over there about to watch Cannes in person right now of all those reviews. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to drop a subscription down below. And finally, before we plunge into the deep end with the summer box office, let's take a quick peek at my track record, because going back to 2021 was the first year I really started to predict the box office. I got 9 out of the 10 movies right and 4 of the 10 in the right slots. I was massively wrong with In the Heights. I had that as the number 5 grosser of the summer, but I did nail these spots with A Quiet Place Part 2, Jungle Cruise, Cruella, and Candyman. Then in 2022 was my best year so far. Nailed all 10 movies, had 4 of the 10 in the right spots, those being Thor: Love and Thunder, Lightyear, Bullet Train, and DC League of Super Pets. However, last year, 2023, was a little bit of a hit or miss for me. While I got 9 of the 10 movies right, I had 0 of the 10 in the right spots. Completely was oversold on The Flash out of its reactions at a CinemaCon, and very much undersold Barbenheimer. But hey, nobody's perfect, right? And before we dive into my predictions for the summer, I want to hear yours out there. If you like some friendly competition or just overtly confident, like some people, including myself, feel free to go to the description box down below. Join our game on the Discord. You can play against me, other servers, and other viewers of this video. But now let's dive into what you are all here for today, my summer box office top 10. And I feel like to make our list, you need to make at least $100 million domestically. I feel like we're going to stay in the box office, where this should be a pretty easy mark to make. Just looking to last year, we had 13 movies cross this mark in the summer box office window, and to make the top 10, you needed to rack in at least $150 million. So that's the number that we're really going to be looking at here today. Just missing our cut by 1 week is Beetlejuice, which if it had come out just 1 week prior, would have 100% make this list. The Jenna Ortega and Michael Keaton starring film will see marvelous Keaton walk-ups with that It slot to open up the fall box office season. But all of you out there already know what our summer schedule looks like. If not, let's take a dive into the 45 films getting a wide release currently. Some titles may automatically leap out to you, but we're going to go ahead and chop it down to just the films I personally see crossing $100 million domestically and go from there. That is going to leave us with The Fall Guy, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, If, Garfield, Furiosa, A Mad Max Saga, Bad Boys Ride or Die, Inside Out 2, A Quiet Place Day 1, Horizon and American Saga, Chapter 1, Despicable Me 4, Fly Me to the Moon, Twisters, Deadpool and Wolverine, Borderlands, Alien Romulus, Horizon American Saga Chapter 2, and Kraven the Hunter. And yeah, drop those LOLs down in the chat, because I'm not just including a Morpheverse movie, a rom-com, and a goofy-looking John Krasinski project in my possible contenders, but I also have both Horizon movies there that could really sink or swim my overall predictions for the summer. But as Ricky Bobby says, if you're not first, you're last. So let's kick things off with who I expect to be the king of the 2024 summer box office. And well, it should be a walk in the park, right? There's one obvious film that everyone seems to be predicting, but to me, I'm kind of between 5 films, and I don't know, should I play it safe? Do I go with something fun, a massive more pick, or do I just go crazy? And I've tended to do both in the pandemic era so far. I went with Black Widow in 2021, Multiverse of Madness in 2022, which both felt like safe choices, even though they both ended up coming in second place. However, last year I took a massive swing and a miss by predicting Disney's The Little Mermaid live action remake to be our king of the 2023 summer box office, but that ended up falling all the way down to the 5th slot, being outgrossed by the cultural sensation of Barbenheimer, and then 2 superhero flicks being Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So this year we have a superhero flick being Deadpool and Wolverine, which seems like an obvious number 1. The previous 2 entries both made over $300 million domestic, and now you add in Wolverine and the MCU of it all, that seems prime for a massive boost. However, we have an R rating here. Keep in mind the highest R-rated grossing summer film since 2016 was the last Deadpool at $318 million. Obviously, we had Oppenheimer last year, but that seems lame just referencing last year. And honestly, maybe I'm not in the right circles, but the hype around this film seems kind of muted. I just see this kind of being like Multiverse of Madness, where it's a massive opening weekend and the legs are solid but doesn't really have that huge breakout potential. We have not seen an animated film stand on top of the summer box office crown since 2018 or 2019 if you want to count Disney's The Lion King remake, but summer 2024 presents at least 2, maybe 3 anime movies that seem poised to be contenders for this throne. The first coming from Pixar. Obviously they've had a few skids in the recent few years, however these have not been sequels. Inside Out 2 looks to rectify those issues this summer, as well as Illumination's Despicable Me 4, which should continue to show how strong Illumination is and their emergence in the box office scene. But even with all the memes, positive buzz, and like no competition for the family demographic, Rise or Gru maxed out at $360 million, while the previous Despicable Me 3 only saw about $260 million. So that leaves me with my crazy and my morb predictions here. Another legacy sequel with buzzy traction, or does Warner Brothers retain the crown by bringing out the old heads in droves for a throwback western? But at the end of the day, I'm going to lean with something that's kind of underwhelming, but I just feel like it's going to be Inside Out 2. Pixar's newest should be poised to be our victor this summer. I mean, as I mentioned before, look at all those sequels numbers to their beloved films. Incredibles 2 won the crown in 2018 with $602 million domestic. You can make the case that that was a long-awaited sequel. Inside Out 2 doesn't really have that poise going for it like Incredibles had, so let's compare it with Finding Dory, which I think is very on par. And that one, back in 2016, were $482 million. Additionally, Toy Story 4 was our runner-up in 2019 with $430 million. But since the lockdown, Pixar has struggled. Lightyear, while it wasn't a sequel, it was a spin-off to one of the brand's biggest IPs, only cashed in $118 million in 2022, and then Elemental barely scraped our top 10 last year at 150, but currently holds the record for the highest grossing original property post-lockdown. While the cry for a sequel to Inside Out was not as loud as The Incredibles, it does feel on par with Finding Dory, as a film not just for families to rush out to, but people my age. Gen Zers will also go out in droves. We will find out if Inside Out 2 can land the Summer 24 crown starting on June 14th. Now I want to make one thing clear here. I am the original Minion head. Back when Despicable Me came out when I was like 10 years old, I was captivated and have remained a fan ever since. Obviously, these movies are dumb, but they're dumb fun. I always like to say the Minions are like Jackass for kids, and I think that's a very fair assessment for these films. And obviously, kids dominate the summer box office because they're not the only ones to go. Because if a kid wants to go, that's one person. Then they have to drag a parent, maybe both parents, and then maybe they have a sibling or two, and then maybe they have a grandparent or two. That's 7 tickets just because one person wants to go out to see a film. And Despicable Me is a franchise that's done what every franchise desires to do, and that's increasing its gross with every single film. The first one made $250 million. The second one, $368. And sure, Despicable Me 3 did see a setback to $264 million, but that was just a super stacked summer because when we factor in both Minion spinoffs, you get an additional $336 and $370 million. So by those metrics, we're looking at Despicable Me 4 raking in around $400 million domestic here. Illumination is the GOAT at marketing, making sure people are aware of their films and getting butts in the seats. It's so weird to have 2 major anime films duking it out this summer, but if you consider Disney's The Lion King remake, we did have this exact scenario back in 2019 with both The Lion King and Toy Story 4 putting up over $400 million domestic, so it's not that out of the question. We see if Despicable Me 4 can win not just the animated battle, but the entire summer on the weekend of July 3rd. I know, you're shocked out there to see Deadpool and Wolverine not on top of my list, but hear me out before rushing to the comments to throw all the hate and all the shade that you definitely want to throw my way. In addition to my fears about the R rating, as I stated before, it's just its broader appeal. Looking back to the last time a superhero movie topped the summer box office in a non-COVID year was 2017, where Wonder Woman put up just $409 million domestic. That number would not be good enough to top any summer since, with the exclusion of those COVID years, obviously. When you consider the ongoing superhero fatigue and the fact that this film is R-rated, I feel like Deadpool 3 seems safer for that 350, 450 range, which still is an improvement from the series' previous 2 installments, but just is not a total that's good enough to be the king of our summer. For all the haters down below, Deadpool and Wolverine will have the opportunity to prove me wrong on July 26. Twisters. Yeah, I said it. In 1996, Twisters racked up $512 million adjusted for inflation. The film was a staple in VHS for many growing up, an attraction at one of the world's most visited theme parks for decades, and looks like the popcorn flick of the summer. All this makes for a recipe for a film looking to explode and exceed all expectations, but my question is, how much will it exceed? Now, I'm not saying this will pull a Top Gun Maverick and rack in $700 million domestic, but I've seen people say this could do less than 125, which seems absurd. My biggest restriction from wanting to full send Twisters as my number one for the summer 24 box office is its access to those premium large screen formats, because just 1 week later, Deadpool and Wolverine will open and surely take away the access to all those screens. And sure, you can say last year, Barbie won the box office, never having access to IMAX, to Dolby, stuff along those lines. But Twisters just seems like the film that needs those screens to really succeed, because just like Top Gun Maverick, the opening weekend could be high, but its real strength is going to come from word of mouth, getting that older demographic to come back to the theaters is what's really going to strive this film for greatness. I've heard from industry peeps that say Universal is very confident in their product and expects big things this summer. The real question is, how insane can these legs be to demolish the summer and potentially become the people's champ on July 19th? Now, when I said I had a more prediction, this spot is exactly that. Because I can see a world where this film tops the summer. I can also see a world where this film fails to make our top 10. Maybe I'm taking a swing in the wrong direction again, but Kevin Costner's Horizon American Saga Chapter 1 seems poised to capture an itch audiences rarely have the opportunity to tackle. Not only is this film a Western, not only is it a large-scale epic, it is also the beginning of a new marketing strategy for long-form content that incentivizes the TV demographic to come back to the cinema in droves. The success of Horizon falls on if the older audience member shows up for something that they have been begging for. You hear all the time, they don't make them like they used to. This is why theaters are dying. If they made good things, we'd go. Well, Yellowstone lovers, because that is one of the biggest shows of all time according to streaming data. Here is your chance to be heard, to be seen, to dominate the box office. Obviously, I make these predictions ahead of time. The summer box office season kicks off in May. I gotta have these in before May. However, this film is premiering at the Cannes Film Festival, and we've seen 2 recent films have very different trajectories after premiering there for the international critics. Top Gun Maverick succeeded. It soared over all our expectations and grossed $700+ million domestic and was our biggest film in 2022. However, last year, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was poised to rack in that 4-quadrant demographic, and then it opened at Cannes to very muted responses and struggled with legs, with word of mouth during the summer, and came in far under expectations. And obviously, Horizon can go either way. Personally, I think Warner Brothers knows that they have something special on their hands, or they wouldn't feed Costner's baby to the wolves out at the Cannes Film Festival. Horizon American Saga could change the theatrical distribution method forever on June 28th. Now, my number 6 film is one that has such a high floor, but also such a low ceiling. Honestly, this probably should be a few spots higher on my list, but just because it doesn't have that boom potential, I do have that at my number 6, and that is Chris Pratt collecting another one of his Infinity Stones for voicing an iconic animated character, this time being Garfield with the Garfield movie. Garfield honestly feels like it should have been a spring film. Imagine this coming out in late March in that Mario release slot. It could have dominated the month of April, especially for the family demographic. Like, what even has been out for kiddos since Kung Fu Panda 4? While Sony is no illumination when it comes to viral marketing, they did have Across the Spider-Verse defy all expectations with this release date last year. However, there's two more notable animated films coming out this summer, which I feel could kind of dive into the shares that Garfield could eat up, but we'll see how it goes head to head against the competition on May the 24th. Now, there's so much talk about the modern movie star. Do they exist? If they do, who is one? Well, what if I told you one of the biggest movie stars of all time is starring in their tentpole franchise, coming off the highest domestic earning gross of any film inside of this franchise? You would say, oh, of course, this film's gonna rake in all the dough. But when I say that star is Academy Award winner Will Smith and his newest installment of the Bad Boys franchise on June the 7th, your tune may change, because Bad Boys Ride or Die will be the true test of a few bold claims made by film Twitter in the last few years. 1, is there such thing as a modern movie star? 2, is Will Smith still a star after the slap? And 3, will audiences show up for a film that gets mixed to negative critical reception in droves? Because adjusted for inflation, Bad Boys 1 grossed $162 million domestic, Bad Boys 2 raked in a franchise high $215 million domestic, and then Bad Boys 4 took in over $206 million before its run was cut short due to a global pandemic. Even doing the average gross of those three films would easily land Ride or Die inside of our top 10. In fact, that number would be $192 million domestic, which should have Ride or Die a few spots higher than where I currently have it on, but let's find out if Big Willie style is still a trend on June the 7th. As you can see, I am super high on Horizon Chapter 1. I've bitten into the Costner bait, and I'm once again probably falling into the trap of the dreaded old folks walk-ups that we seem to buy into each year. Sometimes it works in our favor. Look at Maverick, look at Elvis, look at Sound of Freedom. Other times, it really doesn't, with some odd sequels to one-of-a-kind hits like Book Club 2, Downton Abbey 2, or can premiering films that fall right on their face that seem like surefire hits like Dial of Destiny. All I know is I'm a predictor who loves to take risks. I mean, go look at my Oscar predictions. And if I have Chapter 1 exploding, I need Chapter 2 to do exceptionally well. My main reason for having Chapter 1 higher is solely for the fact that it comes out first. It will be in theaters for longer, and if Chapter 1 is a failure, it will kill 2. I don't see a world where 2 outgrosses 1 simply due to the current release strategy. Find out if Horizon American Saga Chapter 2 makes or breaks my predictions on August 16th. In my number 9 slot is our next entry into the year of the monkey. We've had Monkey Man, we've had Kong, and now it's time for the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I am a massive fan of this franchise, so I'm trying to keep my personal hype out of my predicting brain. Looking at the last 3 entries, which all came out during our summer months, Rise grossed $172 million in August of 2011, Dawn racked in $206 million in July of 2014, and War stumbled by putting up a trilogy low of $148 million in July of 2017. Now the series takes a stab into a new month. I'm expecting Kingdom to find its way between that Rise and Dawn gross on May the 10th. To conclude my top 10 for summer 24, I have a battle between 2 films appealing to completely different types of cinema goers. And this oddly reminds me back to summer 21 because we have an Emily Blunt action comedy going against the newest installment of the Quiet Place franchise. While this installment of A Quiet Place does not star Emily Blunt, the franchise showed even in a regressed box office state of how strong the title is for general audiences, putting up $160 million with some pretty fantastic legs. While lower than the cultural sensation of the original's $188 million, not a bad number at all for a film in a very repressed market. On the other hand, we had the Blunt and Ryan Gosling starring The Fall Guy, who kicks off our summer movie season in the first weekend of May. Gosling is coming off of the summer crown last year for starring in Barbie, hoping to see his goodwill carry over to his newest. The director of The Fall Guy, David Leitch's previous film, Bullet Train, snuck its way into the top 10 of summer 2022, grossing just over $100 million with exceptional legs in August. Paramount seems to be very confident in A Quiet Place Day 1 and having its trailer debut at the Super Bowl and has racked up a fair share of views on YouTube. However, The Fall Guy also seems to have some very positive buzz out of its South by Southwest premiere, and it seems to really check off all those boxes of just a fun, turn your brain off popcorn flick that we always see succeed in the early windows of the summer box office. So at the end of the day, between The Fall Guy and A Quiet Place Day 1, I think it's going to be neck and neck for our number 10 slot. I could see it coming down between $5 and $10 million. Just because it opens earlier, will have the chance for longer legs, has less competition in that early window, I am going to give the edge to The Fall Guy, who crashes into the market on May the 3rd. Summer 24 at the box office looks absolutely stacked. In addition to A Quiet Place Day 1, some other very notable exclusions would include Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Fury Road, the last installment of this franchise, only managed to put up $153 million on both amazing reception from the critics and the audiences. And sure, the rise of these premium large screen formats could help this film, but I just think the competition will really hurt George Miller's newest installment have amazing legs in the coming few weeks. Other potential breakouts I could see is the newest Alien franchise installment being Romulus. However, this seems more like a $100 million grosser than more of a $160 million grosser, which I currently have The Fall Guy being at my number 10 slot. And just to name some other films, just in case they do completely break out, the first one is If. The marketing does not scream a great film at all, but that marketing is everywhere. The family demographic could show out. Detective Pikachu had a great run in its summer. You take off the IP, I kind of see that where If lands, again, right around that $100 million mark. And begrudgingly, to mention some other films, I guess let's shout out Borderlands. I don't believe in this at all, but if the gamer demographic shows out, like they did with Five Nights at Freddy's, maybe this could find its way to a sneaky number 10 slot in our summer top 10. So let's look at my top 10 one last time. At my number 1 slot, we have Inside Out 2. Number 2 is Despicable Me 4. My number 3 is Deadpool and Wolverine. I have Twisters in at 4th. A bold prediction of Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1 at my number 5 slot. Garfield is at 6. Bad Boys Ride or Die at 7. The follow-up to Chapter 1, Chapter 2 from Horizon at my number 8 slot, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes at number 9, and The Fall Guy rounding out my top 10. So that's my 2024 summer box office predictions. If you made it this far in the video, consider dropping a like if you enjoyed my rambles, a subscription if you want to see more box office and Oscar news, and make sure to comment down below with your personal predictions and go to the link down in the description to join the Discord, playing the game yourself, because there will be some pretty cool prizes handed out at the end of the summer. But until next time, my name's Dyl, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.